Hello and welcome to Business Daily on Trust TV. Of course, we are coming to you live from Trust Television headquarters in the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja. I am your host, Christiana Amodu Otinya. It's a pleasure to have you join us on the program today. Trust us on the program to bring you up to speed with developments in the world of business, finance, the economy, and the stock market is not left out. First, let's give you the headlines. Now, food price index soars to 215.6%. Forex policy widened exchange gap by 300 naira, and that's coming in from APCON. We'll bring you more stories in the business roundup segment. We'll bring you stock market updates after this. Welcome back. Now let's delve into it, get into what's happening, especially on the stock market. Are the bears or the bull dominating the stock market, and also what to expect for the stock market in the new week? We begin from the local buzz in Custom Street, talking about the Nigeria Exchange. Now, we saw the Nigeria Exchange cap the week to end October 14, up 0.46%. The all-share index settled at 47,569.04. Now, for activity levels, a total volume of 124.4 million shares valued at 4.3 billion naira changed hands in 3,101 deals on the floor of the local buzz. Equity cap ended at 25.91 trillion naira. So for midweek, we saw profit-taking activities on the local buzz, but the week-on-week close was up 0.46%, as you can see right there. Now let's go over to other African markets. We begin from the Johannesburg Securities Exchange. Now the sentiment here is largely red. The JSE is down 0.19%, and the GSE in Ghana is down 0.05%. For South Africa, the focus largely has been on what's happening with the state-owned utility, that's Eskom. So there's been issues around power cuts, and investors are monitoring that development. Going over to Wall Street now, the United States. The big numbers that came in for Wall Street was U.S. inflation figures, of course, 8.2%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average ended 1.34%. The S&P 500 2.37%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite down 3.08%. There. Now, the markets are expected to open the week largely higher as investors shrug off those concerns that came in from the inflation numbers. Of course, the focus this time around will be on earnings report. What's the health of these companies like, and also what will be the outlook for these companies, especially with inflation and a global recession fear around the corner. Going over to Europe now, European markets are also monitoring what's happening, especially from the US. Now, all the markets in Europe are largely in positive territory. The FTSE 100 in the UK up 0.12%, as you can see right there. Now, there was a big shake-up in the United Kingdom, talking about the resignation of the finance minister. Now we have a new person coming in on board. The CAC 40 in France up 0.90%, and in the German Strait, the DAX is up 0.67%. Now let's go over to Asia Pacific markets. What's happening there? Now, the Nikkei 225 in Japan is down 1.16%. The Shanghai Composite in mainland China climbed 0.47% at 3,086.38. And in South Korea, the Kospi is up 0.62%. Markets in the Asia Pacific are also focusing on the key components from the speech by President Xi Jinping of China, talking about what's happening with the Chinese economies. Let's go over now to commodities market. What are the prices like for today? We have 2 reds and 4 greens there. As you can see, the international benchmark for crude oil Brent up 1.27%, $92.79 per barrel. Is it uhuru for Nigeria yet? Of course not. More needs to be done in terms of what's happening with the oil sector. Gold, the bullion is up 0.72%. For agro commodities, palm oil is largely down 0.99%. Wheat is doing 1.46% higher at $872.28. And for cocoa is down 0.34% there. So we have more greens here on this chart for you. Cryptocurrency, what's happening in the crypto market? For Bitcoin, Bitcoin is trading at $19,283.95. How many Bitcoins do you have? Have you thought of that? Now, we saw a drop for Bitcoin from 60,000 to 19,000. Of course, analysts have said for the cryptocurrency markets, the ember months or towards the end of the year is not really bearish most times, but we've seen the bears dominating for some months now. Ethereum up 1.19%. Binance is also up 1.15% at $271.09. So that's all we have for you. The numbers we have to crunch for you on the program today. Let's quickly take you through the business roundup, talking about the major stories we have for you today in the Straits of Business. Now, the consumer price index for food in Nigeria was 556.4 in August 2022 compared to 176.3 in May 2015, according to independent research conducted by Business Day. For the country's 200 million citizens, food production is still largely insufficient. The Agriculture Promotion Policy document of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, which reveals a deficit of 60 million chicken birds and 20.14 million tons of crop, highlights the growing food shortage in Nigeria. Now, this shows that there are 20.14 million tons of crop deficit and 60 million poultry birds deficit. Now, going over to the forex market, President of the Association of Bureau de Change Operators of Nigeria, APCON, Aminu Gwadabe, says that the Central Bank of Nigeria's unconventional foreign exchange policy has negatively impacted the naira stability across all markets and created a significant premium between official and parallel market rates. In a statement, Gwadabe said that a massive rate disparity of 300 naira to a dollar currently existed in the markets, with the official market rate at 430 naira to a dollar and the parallel market rate at 730 naira to the dollar. That's the much we can take for the business roundup. Now, I will be joined on the program today by two gentlemen. We have Gideon Negedu, who is the Executive Secretary of FEPSAN, and also David Omata. He is an environmental activist and also a public affairs analyst. The focus on the program today largely is on food security. I just want to get the thoughts of Gideon before we go on the short break. Now, what's the situation like now for you, Gideon, talking about what's happening? What's the situation now for you? What's the situation now for you, especially with the flooding situation going on in the country? Talking about food security, the IMF has said that Nigeria is going to see dire consequences from the flooding to food security. In 1 minute, give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, very grave concern. The flooding has been the worst that we have experienced as a country. And there's real concern as to the impact it's going to have. The harvest will be, as we speak, farmers are harvesting right now. And it's been a tale of woes, unfortunately. But it's not entirely a sad story, so that people should not be overly aggravated. But yes, there is real concern. Farmers are also trying to see what they can recoup as the floods recede, so that they are able to make best of the dry season and probably show up what we have lost in the wet season. Okay,
thank you for that. I like the fact that you said it's not totally a tale of woes, because someone actually tagged it on Twitter. Hunger is coming. I don't want to be a doomsday prophet, but let's stay optimistic. We'll take a short breather. When we return, Business Daily continues. Please stay.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back, and thank you for still staying there with us on the program. If you're just joining the program, this is Business Daily, where we give you everything that matters in the world of business, finance, economy, and the stock market. Now, I have my guests with me, like I just introduced them. I have Gideon Nigedu, who is the Executive Secretary of FEPSAN, and also David Omata, Environmental and Public Policy Analyst. Both of them are joining me on the discussion of the program today. But before we get into the discussion proper, let's take a look at this situation report from what's happening with flooding in Lokoja. Please take a listen.
Some shops in the area have managed to survive the flood. Owners are counting their losses. For some people, the losses were few, while others weren't so lucky. Many had properties and goods destroyed in the flood, but the main problem now is low or no patronage at all, as many citizens are scared to venture out. This obviously will further slow down economic activity in the state.
I'm currently standing in what used to be a very dry road. Right now the water is just about my shin level, and if you look behind me, the water only gets deeper. As you can see from the building, about half or more than half of the building has been submerged in water. So right now the situation in this area, which is the ultra modern market area, you can see some stores are now locked up. The owners of these shops are completely unable to access their shops to get their daily bread as they normally would. So although the water is actually drying up, the situation at hand is still quite bad.
And the situation was very worst. Even it crossed the road to this side. I have to move this thing back of this stone so that the water will not affect me. Things got increased. Like rice or yam, they buy before 1,000. They will be able, some will have that fear to even come to the market, whether they will cross the water or they will fall, or something might happen to them.
Yeah, you felt that even some customers can able to pass and buy something, and even enter some people's shop, and even spot some load. And thank God for everything.
Honestly, things has so much affected us in many areas. So, one, the other shop you are seeing is my second shop. Everything with the fridge, generator, all is filled up with water over there. Even this place too, we have a lot of damages here. My own idea that the Kogi State government should kindly, if there's any means they can work towards this so that it will not occur again, because this thing has caused us a lot of damages.
Last 2012, I lost money. We are come out to collect for cooperative to buy loot, about 18,000 naira. The one with water knows will spoil it and will remain. This year again is about almost 50,000 naira again. And there are some generators where they are called don't enter water. I never know whether those ones have been repaired, they will still work or they not go work again. We beg our governor, Alhaji Yaya Bello, to help us, because we have family, and without food, without work, we cannot do anything. So make it look into our matter.
The flood in Lokoja has not only come with a lift-off of dirt, but it has also brought much sorrow and distress to the residents of the state. And many of them are calling out to the government to provide some level of succor to their situation and to also take preventative measures to prevent a reoccurrence of this flood. Chamun Dabeng, Trust TV, Kogi State.
Thank you, Chairman, for that report. Now, I'll just go straight to David. You're an environmental expert. You monitor things around climate change and all of that. Tell me, what are your thoughts on, we just watched the video, houses submerged in water, farmland submerged in water. Tell me, what's going through your mind?
Thank you very much. As an environmental analyst, if you look at it from the environmental side of it, you would see that the flooding has caused a lot of environmental degradation. You would see a lot of farmlands, a lot of hectares, thousands of hectares of land have been destroyed. And we can say, aside the dam that has been released from Cameroon, this is also due to the climate change effect, which is hitting us real hard. And we need to put up the necessary measures in line to act quick, not just to mitigate, but also to prevent this not to happen again in the future. This would have a lot of impact if measures are not taken, and if both the international and the local bodies do not come together to put up the policies and then take up the necessary actions that would help us to be able to withstand or cushion the impact of this flooding in the subsequent times.
Okay, thank you for that. I want to come to Gideon now. You interface a lot with farmers by virtue of your position as the executive secretary of FEPSAN. And we know that some farmers have said that they've lost close to $15 million. A very popular farm setting said they've lost close to $15 million in crops due to the flooding. I want you to tell me what kind of, not to dwell on the things that have happened already, what kind of solutions or what kind of assistance should be given to these farmers that have lost livelihood? Because you mentioned that this is harvest season.
Yes, again, let me commiserate with our farmers. It's a very painful thing, particularly at the point of harvest. This is when the 3-4 months you've spent going through the whole farming hog, and then you're just about to harvest, and you have this kind of challenge. It can be emotionally devastating, and the impact on your finances is disturbing. What I would strongly recommend is that, just like my colleague here earlier spoke, there's a need for cohesive an approach to assisting the farmers so that they are not discouraged. We rely heavily on farmers for our food. Most of our food in this country comes from the smallholder farmers.
Sure.
And whatever needs to be done to help to continue to encourage them in what they are doing will not be too much. So first, I think government needs to do a thorough assessment to know who and what has been affected, and come up with cushion effects to be able to assist them. But more importantly, as we go into the dry season and as the flood waters are receding, for experienced farmers, it's also an opportunity for them to replant and see how they can get a good harvest by the dry season. So what government can do and needs to do is to support them with inputs, critical inputs like fertilizers, seeds at this time, so that they are able to go in and recover the little they can. But there's no gainsaying that there is need for a holistic support to address the issue now and see how we can prevent, like my brother said, these issues from reoccurring again.
I want to speak with you now, David, on issues around climate preventive buffers, because you mentioned the fact that part of this is as a result of climate change. At the just concluded meetings, the annual meetings of the IMF and the World Bank, they alluded to the fact that climate change, there's a climate economy that is actually coming up now. What kind of climate preventive buffers should the country put in place to ensure that these floodings that come in, year out, there's no, with farmers, business people don't keep counting losses?
Okay, coming from the international scene, I think a lot of policy setting has been done. Now, it is left for Nigeria to domesticate some of these policies, not just at the federal level, but down to the states and even the local government. Now, looking at the flooding situation, for example, when it came, there was a blame game from the state government to the federal government that, oh, federal government, come and help us. And there was a press release from the presidency that, no, there is a fund that is allocated to you, both the state government and the local government, to help to fight this whenever it occurs, or even put the preventive measures in place. Now, talking about some of the climate mitigation measures that can be put in place, we can talk about the smart farming process, or the climate smart farming initiatives, so that our farmers can adopt some of these measures. This needs, like I said, to be domesticated, not just at the federal level. Once these policies are made, most times they just stop there. How does it get to the real people at the grassroots? Also talking about putting the measures in place in terms of the policy mitigation. There are some things that, activities that are being in place now that are not in line with the concept of fighting climate change, which even some of the government ministries, they are not really aware of. There is a need for policy harmonization and coherence between the government sectors. Once there is a policy coherence, you would know that, oh, while I'm taking this action to provide food, I should also know that it has some trade-offs with climate change, that it may lead to causing climate change. An example I would give is on the highly hazardous pesticides, which has been banned by different countries, especially the developed countries. But some of these things are still being imported into the country. If you use it on the farm, aside the health effect, it has environmental impact too. So it's time for our government to come to understand that there are some actions, or there are some even programs that are being done. There are programs that they incentivize for farmers, a kind of where they give them these products, go and use it. And these things has both environmental and health effect. By the time all these measures are put together, like I said, a policy harmonization and coherence, and stepping down this policy to the grassroots, then we'll have the right measures put in place that we can use to fight climate change.
I want you to speak towards what to expect, especially for food prices. We're in a month whereby we see a spike in food inflation most times. And there's been predictions by think tanks saying that there's going to be food scarcity, there's going to be increase in the price of food. Food inflation is currently at 23.52%. We expect inflation numbers for the month of September from the NBS this week. Also, what's the outlook for food prices as we go into the peak of the Yuletide?
Well, I don't have empirical data to be able to give a concrete position on that, but I think this is where government needs to step up its game.
Okay.
It needs to, at this time, properly analyze what has happened, structure out or sector out where you have had this flood, and let us know what the crisis really is. Because unfortunately, with crises like this, there are those who stand to want to unduly benefit, and they drive speculation, which unfortunately will also drive food prices even further. Yeah. So government needs to step up and allay the market very quickly so that we know what the real position of things are. I just want to digress a little. My brother did raise a very critical point about policy harmonization and all that. I really think, to be fair to government, there's a lot of policies, but how it cascades down to the farmer, or how it's implemented, is still the core of why we're having these problems that we're having. Early warning systems need to be communicated clearly. Yeah. For example, I know NIMET has tremendously improved its own predictions, and they did give these warnings early on this year that we're going to see flash floods across different areas. But how seriously was that warning taken, and how did that message cascade down to the farmer so that he prepares, whether in the type of farming he wants to do, the crops he wants to put in place? These things need to form part of a cohesive system that has direct impact on the farmer so that we prevent this going forward. The problem with climate change does not look like this challenge is going to go away anytime soon. Sure. But we have to begin to, as a country, or we need to consolidate the efforts that we're making even more to make sure that we don't have this kind of devastating impact. So to the price of food, I think a lot will rely on government to make sure that the market is calm. The alternative is for people to start hoarding and stocking, because they want to. They are speculating that the prices will go up. Hopefully, I want to believe that yes, we've had floods, but we would have a sufficient harvest. We will have a sizable harvest as a country. That's my own optimism, yes. But that has to be backed up by reality, not by just sheer optimism.
Okay, as we wrap up the program now, David, I just want to have your final thoughts. You spoke about climate smart farming and all of that. Now, a lot has been said about what government needs to do. For farmers particularly that have lost outputs, what can they do briefly to mitigate incidents of floods like this that will maybe come up again?
Okay, for farmers to take the actions, we will look at the large-scale farming. These are the people that may adopt most of these climate-smart process for farming.
In 40 seconds. Can you do that for me, please?
Okay.
Yes.
So, yes, farmers, both the large and the small holders, farmers should need to, or would need to adapt. For example, moving from the organic to inorganic, because we have seen that some of these fertilizers also has climate change effects.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gideon, in 10 seconds, what will be your parting thoughts?
My parting thought is that we should be optimistic.
Okay.
And government should put in place measures so that we can recoup in the dry season as much as we can.
Optimism, recouping, very important. Thank you, gentlemen. Gideon Nigedu, Executive Secretary, Fertilizer Producers and Suppliers Association of Nigeria, David Omata, Environmental and Public Policy Analyst, and also Bridge Fellow of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
And that's why we call it a wrap for the program today. Of course, it is essential that we build agricultural productivity, and Nigeria is food secure. I am Christiana Amodu Otinya. Thank you for joining in and enjoy the rest of your day.